Hi, Sweetest Honey listeners. Our sponsor is the Pickleball Headquarters Chicken and Pickle. Chicken and Pickle is your go-to destination for all things family-friendly. Whether you're hitting the pickleball courts for some friendly competition, catching the big game with your friends, or enjoying brunch and yard games with your family, they have it all. Food, drinks, events, fun. Chicken and Pickle is the coolest backyard you'll never want to leave. Chicken and Pickle has locations nationwide and 2 right here in DFW. Text CNP Sweet as Honey to 43618 for a free shareable appetizer when you visit your nearest location.
Sweet as Honey podcast, Jeanine Amapola, season 2.
Woo!
Woo!
Welcome back to Sweet as Honey. Today we have a super exciting guest I've wanted to have on the podcast for forever, so I'm so glad you're here. This is Jeanine Amapola Ward now. Do you go by Jeanine Ward?
Not really. I feel like people know me as Jeanine Amapola Ward, and I will say when you get married, you're still grieving like losing your name in some senses. So I don't know, but I go by whatever.
Yeah,
whatever.
And you've built your whole brand around like Amapola.
Yes.
So it is different.
On my Instagram bio, it does say Ward on there because of course I want to put respect on my husband's name as well. But it's weird when it's like that was your name for so long and you're like, wait, that's still a part of me. So
yeah, proud of it. I love it. Well, Jeanine has like a whole bunch of things going on that you do. You're an amazing creator. So she's on YouTube. She has her own podcast called Happy and Healthy. And now she's an author. So this is her cute little book.
It's so crazy.
I know. Is it weird seeing your face on a book?
Yeah, it's so funny because like I never thought my face would be on a book, and neither was I like, hey, put my face on a book. Like the publisher was like, we want you on the book. I was like down to do a cute design, and they were like, no, we want you on the book. So it's weird being like, wait, that's me. So it's pretty cool.
It is
pretty
crazy.
Surreal.
I know. I want to get into the book, but first I want to ask you just how you got into the whole influencer life, creator life.
Yeah, so I am now 30 and I started when I was 17 and it wasn't really a thing back in the day. Mm-hmm. So I started when YouTube was 3 years old. You didn't even make money. It was a super like dinosaur website. Like nothing was popping off on there really. And I remember watching YouTube videos like trying to find a prom makeup tutorial. And I don't know if did you watch YouTube back in the day? Like were you ever on it? Okay, so like Megan Hart's Makeup and Michelle Phan, like these like OG YouTubers. I was obsessed. And after a while, I was like, I think I could do this myself. And I always knew I wanted to do something within like media. Mm-hmm. My dream was to be Hannah Montana. I'm not even kidding. I wanted to like dance and sing and act. And then I also wanted just to like still go to college and have a normal life. And I didn't think that was a reality for me because my dad was very against, I think, Hollywood. And I think now we kind of know why.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, how am I going to like achieve my dreams? And so I just started posting on YouTube and they started going viral my junior year of college. Okay. And honestly, like I was so close to quitting. I was like, this is not for me anymore. I'm tired of this. I'm not gaining as fast as I want. And I just wanted to be a normal person at college. Mm-hmm. And I had a friend encourage me. She was like, don't quit. Like, you're not done. Like the world still needs you. And I was like, okay, fine. So I'm going to like keep pressing in. And the more that I did, my channel ended up going viral. And it was just really, really crazy. I ended up collabing with that friend. And then everything just started like popping off. And it was just happening so fast that I didn't even know what to do. And so senior year of college, I was like, okay, like I'm doing this for real. I never did any college internships because I pretty much was like, this is my job. Mm-hmm. And I absolutely loved it. I don't know, I was decent at it, but it wasn't always my thing. Like I was just always more creative and I wanted to be my own boss. And so YouTube really gave me that freedom to do that. And so I would always joke, I'm like, I ended up getting my dream of being a Hannah Montana because I was like college student by day, YouTuber by night.
Yeah, best of both worlds.
Yeah, literally. And it was just so fun. And so eventually I just full-time dove into it. I was working with brands. I was doing magazines. I was doing commercials. I mean, it was like this whole crazy experience. Wow. And then I moved out to LA to pursue it more. And honestly, the Lord just grabbed my heart in the process of it. And he was like, you're chasing all the wrong things, all the wrong intentions. And he flipped my life upside down. And so I've been doing this for 12 years now, which has been the most amazing journey of my entire life. I love it so, so much. But it definitely went through some waves, as most things do.
Yeah.
And now I do, as you said, podcasting. I speak. So I got to come and speak to you guys, which was so fun and also a dream come true. And then I just wrote my first book. So here we are now. It's been amazing.
Crazy. Yeah, what a journey and such a grind. Like, people don't understand how much time you have to devote to it.
Right.
Especially to get it to where it is now. Do you have a team, or is it just you?
So I do have a team. It's kind of like an interesting thing. Like, I wouldn't say my team is as big as most people. I have an agent. I did have managers, but I now have an agent. I have an assistant who helps me. I have a complete like podcast team, like a network there. And then honestly, my husband Caleb helps me so much.
Oh, that's
like,
sweet.
I truly don't know what I would do without him. I think a lot of people, which is kind of funny, but I think a lot of people are like, what does her husband do all day long? Like, what does he contribute? Most of the ideas are his ideas.
Good for him.
I know. And I'm like, I didn't even know that like when we got married that he was going to be that good at it.
Yeah.
But it's just so funny. A lot of the times he'll look at it and he'll be like, okay, do this, don't do this. And I'm like, okay. So I copy him, and like 90% of the time when he recommends something, it just works.
It just works.
Yeah.
You're just a power team.
Yeah.
I love that.
But most of the time I'm filming things myself. I send it off to my assistant. She edits. She does a lot of stuff for me. She's amazing. And I did have a bigger team, but I realized that it was too many people involved, and it honestly was a little overwhelming. So I recently refined it and made it a little bit smaller, and I really like the flow that I'm at right now.
Yeah, that's true. And you have like more hands-on that way. I feel like the bigger it gets, it's harder like control all the details of what you want it to be, because it's like your baby.
Yeah, and I want it to feel like it is my baby, because I do think a lot of people will pass off a lot, and when you pass it off too much, it doesn't feel like your own, and you start to see somebody like lose. You don't see the person in their content as much. It becomes more commercialized. Yeah. And I want it to always feel like me still. So yeah.
Yeah. So I want to go back to when you said you like moved out to LA to kind of pursue it further. What did that look like?
Oof. LA was crazy. Have you been to LA?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sure you have. It's a crazy city. So in 2017, I was just like, I needed to get out of Texas. I had just come out of a very toxic relationship that was abusive and just horrible. And I was like, I want to get out of here. I don't even want to be in the same city as this person, to be honest. And so I was debating between New York or LA. It was always like a dream of mine to move to one of those. And I just feel like the Lord was opened so many doors for LA. I had no idea why, but no doors open in New York. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to do that. And I moved out there, and I lived with a couple YouTubers, and I was just like very heavily in like the influencer social media space. So I got into like TV hosting out there. I got into acting, which acting I realized was not really my thing.
That's hard.
Unfortunately.
That's really tough.
I did do some gigs, and I was just like, this is not me. Like I just realized I hate a script. And of course I can do like a teleprompter, but when it came to like memorizing a script, I was horrible at it. So that's why like I love podcasting and hosting so much, because it can just be like your personality. And so I lived out there, and I was just very confused. I was very lost. I was like, who am I? And especially in a city like LA, you get sucked in. Like if you don't have firm values, firm beliefs, if you don't know who you are, you're going to get sucked into it. And so I started hanging out with all the wrong people, doing all the wrong things. I was partying every single weekend. I got super wrapped up into obsessing over my appearance and my body, and started getting like, honestly, borderline eating disorders, which was really hard. And then I was just like chasing money and fame and status, and like, who can I connect with and who can I network with? And I just think that's what just happens when you move out there, and everyone else is doing it. So you just think it's normal.
Right.
And eventually I got to the end of myself where I was like, okay, I am chasing all these things. I'm chasing fame and trying to get skinnier and more pretty. And I'm changing my hair and wearing color contacts. Like, I'm doing all these things.
Colored contacts.
Literally, I was like, I need to look more quote unquote beautiful. And all the while, I'm just like the most insecure I've ever been. I didn't like myself. I was trying every single diet and dating the wrong guys. And I was a mess, literally, which is why I wrote this book, because you read so much of my story in there of like all the things that I tried to do to like myself more or to fit in. And it just got me down this super dark path where eventually I was so desperate and was like, I need friends. I need someone like pouring into me, because I was so alone. I had very flaky, inconsistent friend groups, flaky church. I was just not in church consistently. And even if I was, I don't think those churches were really telling me the truth that I needed to hear.
Yeah.
Which I think is important.
Yeah,
that churches tell the truth. And so eventually, I always was doing YouTube. I still loved it. I was just on this weird journey of like, I was struggling so much offline.
Yeah.
But then online, I was like, guys, I'm amazing. I love my life. And I didn't know how to be vulnerable. I didn't know how to share that. And I would share as much as I could to let them in, but they never fully knew like what I was doing and what was really going on.
Yeah.
And I was just living a very like double life, hypocritical life. Yeah. And so eventually, oh my gosh, the Lord was so gracious and he brought me this Bible study. And it was through like a friend of a friend of a friend. She randomly was like, hey, I have this Bible study. Would you want to come? And I had already been praying. I was like, God, please. I was like, I need people. And I started going and I just met the Lord so real at this Bible study. This mentor poured into me, called me out on my bull crap because your girl, she was in some bull crap. Let's be honest.
At least you're real, you know, you're real with yourself about it.
I mean, I will own that up.
Yeah.
I was not being a good person in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And so it was like the coolest thing, but not even like social media wise, just like I met some of my best friends out there. I learned how to surf. I dated a guy, I got my heart broken again. Like I met so many awesome people and adventure, and it brought out this like really cool adventurous side of me that you'll also read in the book where, as you know, Dallas can be kind of like eat, drink, shop, wealth, appearance.
Yeah.
And so it really got me kind of out of that where I was like, I don't care anymore. Like I just want to be happy. I want to follow God. I want to be around good people. I want to surf. I want to go to adventures. And it really gave me that adventure. So awesome. I would never change my experience for anything. I really wouldn't.
Yeah, there's good that came out of it. And
yeah.
I kind of have some like somewhat similar in my own way, but I can relate to you. Just I was living in Arizona. I went to Arizona State. And so I moved away from home like my second year of college. And I just hit kind of like a rock bottom of just like being alone for the first time. My faith was not solid, so like kind of getting into the wrong things and just making choices I wasn't proud of. And like finally kind of having that like hit your knees moment with God, like, okay, like I really need to surrender and I'm not, like I'm 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And so I had that moment and like kind of had a relationship that actually like pushed me closer to God and my faith, which I was thankful for. But I still had like this dream of becoming a professional dancer. And so I talked about it before on my podcast, but like it was all just about me and like wanting to be a famous professional dancer and be on commercials and do all of that. And so my heart was like set on LA. And that's why I kind of moved to Arizona. I just wanted to be closer. My mom's from Orange County.
Oh, beautiful city.
Yeah. And we grew up going to like Newport every year. And so I loved it. I was like, this is me. I would like cry watching movies because I wanted to do it so bad. Like those like Greatest Showman type movies.
Yeah.
Like, that's just what I pictured my life as. And so I auditioned my junior year, I would say, of college and got an agent out there. Like was planning to move, do the whole thing. I would like fly to LA on a Wednesday morning and fly back to school that night. Like just to try to make it happen.
Yeah.
Because I was so stubborn on it. But then I had like a moment where like all of a sudden kind of my heart changed. And I was like, this is not fulfilling because it's only about me. Like there's nothing that I'm doing here that's really impacting others. And like obviously I had a faith at the time. So like that was my goal. And it just felt like there's something missing.
Yeah.
And so DCC, like never thought about it ever. Like it wasn't in my plans. I met 2 girls at a dance competition, like a college dance competition in Disney World, and like fell in love with them. And then came out here and auditioned just like during COVID. It was so random, but I made it. And like the minute I got here, I felt like it was home. And I think the biggest thing I would like kind of forgot to mention, but when I was in that like lonely place in Arizona, I was praying like I need community. Like I need girls that like 1, prioritize God, but 2, that I can relate to. And I just felt like I wasn't like always relating to the people I met at church and stuff. So coming here, I had like a group of girls who loved to dance and who shared those like common interests, but also were like so on fire for God. And I've never been around that.
Wow.
Like that strong. And people don't expect that about like our team. I don't think, like I didn't expect it.
Yeah.
So I was like shocked, but coming out of that, like you just realize God's plan is like different, but so much better and fulfilling than, you know, what you want for yourself.
And God is just like, he is so woven into every single detail.
Yeah.
Because there's so many things I can look back and I was like, oh, I didn't know that God was already preparing that, or he already planned that out for me, or he's the person that put that person there that I needed to grow my faith more, whatever. Like, it's just really cool when you say yes to things and you partner with God and you're like, God, I'm hungry for you. God uses that hunger. And it's just really cool even seeing that in your story too. And so I just encourage anybody listening, like truly, if you are obedient and you're hungry for God and you're willing to take those chances and also like sacrifice your own like selfish desires of like thinking more about other people, I really think you find way more life and way more joy there. And I think that's also what I came to found too in my own story was most of the reason why I was so sad is because I was only thinking about myself.
Yeah.
And when I changed my platform of like, how can I help other people? Even writing this book, I was like, oh, I feel so much more fulfilled. And so God is so in all the details. And I love that in your story too.
Yeah. And I feel like with both of us, like when you have that heart change and that perspective change, he just takes it further than you could have imagined too. And it's just cool to see how like he blesses it when your posture is like about glorifying him. And
God blesses obedience. That is his love language. And he works with obedience. Like it's not that we obey because we have to. It's we obey because we love him. And it's out of that adoration that we get to obey him. And I think a lot of people have it backwards. I think you'll see in my book and in my story, I obeyed because I was like, oh, my parents told me to, or it's like the thing to do. And that's why I never really went deep with God, because it always felt like something was missing because I didn't understand that. I didn't understand that like, if you love him, you obey his commandments. It's not just obey, period.
Yeah.
It's if you love me. So it's like, just like as a friend, as a boyfriend, as a parent, you love them. So you want to honor them and you want to respect them. And that, for me, that changes everything.
It does. Yeah, that was beautifully said. And I love to just like everything that you've gone through, like you've turned around for the better to help people. And like, that's kind of the purpose of this podcast. Like I love hearing the adversity that people go through because everybody that's around me, like I'm so inspired by the ways that they've used it to just help others or just become a better like version of themselves. And I think it's sweet. But I know you kind of talk about it a little bit in your book. So what would you say is like, I guess, one big story from it that you could share?
That God took for his good.
Yeah. Or,
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh, you'll see it in the entire book. But I mean, I think if I'm being raw, you'll read this story in the book. And I don't publicly open up about this very much because it is such a sensitive topic and it does involve another person. But you'll see in chapter 10 of my book, it's a chapter all about secrets and how I was carrying this huge secret for years and years and years of my life. And I ended up getting eloped in college and I ended up annulling the marriage shortly after because of how toxic it was. And it was just not God's best for me. And me being this young, naive girl who was not genuinely following the Lord, I just made this really unwise decision. And it's really cool now being married and actually being legit married, doing it God's way, doing it the way that I think God ordained it to be, where people bless it, people know about it, a pastor blesses it, your family's in on it, your friends support it. Like that past relationship had none of those. It was in secrecy, it was in sin. We were not living as proper Christians, basically, and no one blessed the relationship. And so now I see on the other side, I'm married to my now amazing, amazing husband. And I don't know where this video is being posted, but I am married. I just don't have my ring on. I forgot my ring today. I just see how God takes those situations that you think this is going to end my life. I mean, it literally made me want to end my life because of how deep I was into the pit and how horrible this person made me feel and how I was like, I am so regretful and shameful of this decision I made, that I was like, how am I ever going to get out of this? And so my only solution I thought of me getting out of it was potentially ending my life or just being like, I'm stuck in this now. And now I see the more I open up about my story and I share it, the amount of women that come to me and they're like, oh my gosh, that's my exact same story. Or I was in an abusive relationship, or this man took advantage of me, or I also made unwise decisions or whatever. Like, it's really cool to see what the enemy meant to destroy you, God uses for his glory. And I think that's in Genesis 50, the same thing with Joseph in the Bible, how his own family tried to destroy him, his own family tried to get rid of him. And in the end, Joseph forgives them and blesses them. And I'm like, man, that's what I want to do even to this person that was really harmful in my life. I want to bless him. I want to pray over him. I don't want to speak ill of him, but I do want to be truthful about the situation. And so that is a story you read more about in my book.
And you have to read it.
And
I have to read it.
I really don't talk much about it anywhere online just because it can open up a can of worms. And a lot of people, there's a lot of, layers to it. And it's hard to explain without people being like, oh, you're this or you're that, or putting labels on you.
Right.
But the point of the story in the book wasn't just be like, oh, hey guys, here's my tea. It was like, this is my story in hopes that it helps you. And then gives God glory to show you that you too can find freedom from whatever it is that you're going through.
It's your testimony.
Absolutely.
And I think transparency is huge. And he gives us those testimonies for a reason. It's like hard to, kind of come to terms with some of those things when it's been like so hard. But then, you get to the other side. Like now you're in a very healthy, godly relationship. And you can relate to like multiple people. And also give advice to searching for the right one.
Man, wait for God's best. I'm telling you, it's not worth it to settle. It's just not.
I know. And I do want to like get into that subject because I've watched your YouTube channel. Like I'll click on the videos of people that are like singleness. Like, all my friends are like married, engaged, or, been dating for a while, and like everybody's on their own timing and path. But it does help to hear people like, okay, I've been through that. Like, what's helped them, or how do you stay focused on God, like through some of that and some of the disappointment that you face within it. So kind of tell me like a little bit about maybe if you had like a struggle with singleness or something you would tell yourself now, like that you're married, to help yourself in it.
I love this topic because especially, being a girl and then you're in the South and like everyone's getting married left and right. And they're getting married, 6 months of knowing each other, especially like in the church. And, as a young girl, I was like, oh, I want to be married when I'm 22 and I want to have kids when I'm 24. And God was like, ripped up that timeline. He's like, that's not happening. You'll be 29 and a half when you get married. And so I went through the whole journey of multiple heartbreaks and just wondering like, why God, why me? Why is this not my story? I want to be married so badly. And I think that was the problem, is I was idolizing marriage so much above just God, above just a relationship with God. I was thinking that the only way that I was going to be blessed or that God's favor was on my life was if I got married. And so I was putting God in a box where I was like, oh, the only reason why you're good is if I get married. And I just think that's a lie. And so I think for anyone that is single, like really, I know it's so frustrating, but like these are those years of your life that you'll never get back. And I did so much in my 20s. I traveled to 30 countries. I served. I lived with different people. I met so many different people. Pursued my career. Like there's just so many things that I'm like, man, if I were married or I had kids, which there's absolutely, I want anyone to listening, anyone that's listening to hear this, like, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with getting married young, because I know a lot of people did. And you can very much do all those things. But like, while you are single, I don't want people sitting around like self-loathing. I want you to take that time and use it for God's glory. Use it to serve, use it to pour back into people, to learn more about yourself, to heal, to thrive, to meet community, to join the small group, like anything that you want to do, like these are your years. And I think that I think I really did that. I did it to the best of my ability, where I look back and I'm like, that was so freaking fun. That was so fun. I'm like, yes, like that was awesome. And I don't know. I think now that I'm married, I would look back at that single girl and I would be like, yes, marriage is so amazing. And it is absolutely a gift from God. But I think a lot of us have this misconception that we think marriage is going to complete us, or that is the end goal, or if I don't get that, then I'm a broken human being, or God doesn't love me.
Yeah.
There's just so many lies, I think, that we think.
Yeah.
And like being on the other side of now being married, I'm like, marriage still does not complete me. Marriage still does not make me fully happy. It is amazing. I love my spouse. It is such a gift. And I would marry this guy over and over and over and over and over.
Yeah.
But ultimately, my true joy and satisfaction, it has to come from God first and foremost. Caleb cannot be my end all be all. He is not my fulfillment. He is not my joy. He is an addition and a blessing to my life, and he does push me closer to God. But overall, like, he's a human being and he's going to fail, and I'm going to fail him. But I think I saw so many marriages on this pedestal where I was like, I want that, you know? And I think a lot of people do that on social media. I want that marriage. And it's like, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And those people are still going to let each other down at some point. And so just letting single girls know that, man, nothing is wasted and no season is wasted. Like, if you have this season, you have it for a reason.
Yeah.
If God wanted you to be married, you would be married right now. If God wanted you to meet your person, you'd meet your person. So trust his timing and know that his timing is so, so, so perfect.
Yeah, that's so good. I have so many thoughts on it, and I like relate to all of it. I think just what you said about like, this is a time you can kind of be selfish with what you want to do, like travel, like go work on your career, go travel, go be with friends, like do anything and everything while you can be selfish with your time a little bit. And then, because when you are married, it's double. Like, you got a double calendar to work with.
It's different, let me tell you. And you have different budgets and like, oh, he's sick, or he has work, or he whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's sacrifice, and it's all good. Like, you know, there's a lot of good to both. But I agree. I think there's times when, like, at first in like my early 20s, like I didn't really think about it.
Yeah.
And then I think the older I got, and like the more it is talked about a lot in church and like circles like that, and just in our 20s in general, I kind of did feel myself. I'm like, okay, I think I'm idolizing this. Like, I know that I think I'm ready to be married, and like I feel that, like, you know, I want that partnership, but there's a reason, like right now, that God's like, okay, we're holding off. Like, you gotta, you know, he's got to prepare you, and he might be preparing the other person
totally
for you as well. And like, it is not worth it to settle or rush God's timing. And so I think what you said is like also true, and I'll just reiterate all of it because I think it's great.
Well, also too, like, who you marry is the second most important decision of your life. First and foremost, your salvation, and then secondly, who you marry and join yourself with can literally be make or break to your life. And so you don't want to rush. You don't want to just date anybody. You don't want to just be like, oh, he's cute and 6 foot and has 6 figures in the bank, like, I'll pick him. It's like, no, he's got to genuinely understand what it means to be in a covenant, what it means to honor God, what it means to follow God, what it means to walk in purity in marriage, after marriage. Like, there's so much that goes into it that I think the world says about marriage. It's just like, oh, we love each other, he's cute, we get along, we've been dating for 5 years, let's get married. And I just think there's so much more. When you get a right understanding of what God's design was of marriage, then you can be a better spouse. When you're like, okay, this isn't just about me. This is about sanctification. This is about us making each other look more like Christ, and then raising godly kids, and like helping each other finish the race strong. Because it's hard. Like, this life is hard. So don't make it more hard on yourself by marrying the wrong person just because you're bored or lonely, you know?
Yeah. You got to have like the same mission, and
totally
having, like, as Christians, like having that value basis, like what you come back to. And so I think like it's easy to see the married life and be like, oh, I want to do that. And like, of course, like everybody.
It's so fun. It is fun. Don't get me wrong.
And I believe it 100%. But there's also a lot of like you said, it's sanctification, like putting yourself second and somebody else first. Like, you got to strip down your ego a little bit, you know, and go through that.
And they say that marriage is a mirror. And I never understood that. I was like, what do you mean it's a mirror? And you get into marriage and they see every single flaw because they're there every single day.
Yeah.
They see your messiness. They see you leave your dishes around. They see the way you are lazy or undisciplined. And he'll challenge me. He'll call me out on things. And I'm like, oh, stop it. And like, you don't know me. And he's like, yes, I do. I live with you. I see you every single day. And then you're like, oh, okay.
That's right.
So it's good though. It's meant for God's glory and to make you look more like him.
Yeah. And I love, like, I'm sure you've heard this image too, but like the triangle, like the cord of 3 strands, like the closer you guys get to God, the closer you guys get to each other. And it's you have your whole life to like grow into that. And
Yeah.
I think like it's just a beautiful picture to look at, because it's like the minute you get married, it's like the start of kind of that new journey of like, okay, like,
yeah.
here we
And
go.
I think a lot of people too, they either have this misconception of I need to be complete and totally secure in myself and stable before I get into marriage. And I do believe like work as hard as you can, like do the therapy, have friends call you out on flaws, have your friends challenge you in sin. Like I remember in the beginning, like probably like 3 or 4 years ago, I was still probably drinking too much. Like I wasn't getting drunk, but I was definitely like having too many drinks. And I had a friend call me out and be like, hey, I don't think that makes you look like Christ. I don't think that's cute. I don't think a guy's going to like that. A godly man's not going to like that. And it was really hard to hear. I was like, oh, like, don't call me out on my stuff. And it actually was really, really good for me. Because like when I did get married, I was able to have a healthy balance then, where it wasn't this like weird thing I had to struggle with in marriage. And so it's like, do your part in singleness to get as healthy as possible. But then know when you get married, again, this person sees everything. They're going to see things that your friends don't see, that your family doesn't see. They're not living with you. And so again, it is part of that sanctification process, and it should make you even better in marriage.
Yeah, I love that. What would you say it was about Caleb that like made you want to choose him?
Oh, I'm like, where do I begin?
That's good. You got a lot of things.
You know what's so funny is like I look back, and I don't know if you've ever had this experience. Like you went on a date with a guy and you're like, he's the one. And you start writing in your journal your name and his last name, and you're like, I'm going to marry him. And then it crumbles, and then you're like, what the heck? God, I thought he was the one.
Yeah.
But I genuinely felt like on the first date, there was just something different about him. I felt so comfortable and so at ease. And I like, this is such a really weird thing. But I always knew if the guy and I were going to work out, if I could have like genuine eye contact on the first date. And I remember going on a first date with another ex, and like I just couldn't like give him like eye contact for some reason. Like I didn't feel fully like comfortable or safe. And I remember going on this first date with Caleb, and I just felt like it was like best friends instantly. Like we had eye contact, we were flirting, it was comfortable. I could pick on him. And I remember just going home being like, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. I like this guy way too much. If he breaks my heart, I'm gonna be so mad. And on top of that, I knew that he loved God. I knew he came from a good family. I knew we had the same values. I knew he loved to travel. And he just pursued. I had never seen a man relentlessly pursue me the way that Caleb did. Like it really genuinely resembled God's heart, because there were so many times where I would show him my brokenness or my sin or my flaws, or like, hey, this is why I don't feel worthy to be pursued of your love. And he'd be like, nope, I love you. And I'd be like, what's wrong with you? Like, I almost didn't understand. I was like, why do you still love me? Like, why do you keep coming back? Because I'd only felt like, oh, I'm the girl that had, 3 failed relationships. Like I just kept wearing this like scarlet letter of like, I'm the girl that was once married. Why would you ever want to pick me? And he just loved me. And he was like, I don't care. Like none of that is an issue for me. I love you because I love you. And he just pursued me and showed me God's love the entire time. And that was just different. He stayed and he accepted my flaws. He accepted my background, my parents being immigrants. Like I think a lot of people in the past too, thought that was weird, or they just didn't understand my culture. And I think that was also difficult for me. And Caleb just accepted me for me and was like, I love you. And I was like, what?
What? That's sweet. He sounds like a gem.
He is.
And didn't he like, I've kind of heard some of your guys' story, but like, didn't he reach out like, oh,
yeah.
Okay. That's what I thought. Like beforehand, before you guys met.
Yeah. He had been pursuing me for about 1.5 years, which was so crazy.
Yeah.
Because I remember after my last breakup, I was just like, God, I am tired. I was like, I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
I don't want to pursue this guy. I want him to know who I am. I want him to see me. Because like I just had heard of so many stories. Like even my best friend Maddie, her now husband, saw Maddie like randomly somewhere, and he was like, that's the kind of girl I want to marry. He's like, I want to marry a Maddie Pruitt one day. And then of course I got married. But I remember being like, dang, that was so romantic. I was like, I want a guy to like see me and just know like I'm his dream girl. And lo and behold, Caleb had been he had seen me for 1.5 years and had seen me through like a friend's Instagram story, been trying to DM me for a very long time. I didn't know that I had responded, but I did, because it was like a random DM like, hey, where'd you get this bag? Or I don't remember, something super random. I was like, oh, it's from blah, blah, blah. And when I finally like followed him back on Instagram after seeing him for the first time, I checked our DMs and I was like, he's been pursuing me for like a year and a half. And I didn't know in the midst of that, he had told friends like, I'm going to marry that girl one day. I'm going to marry her. It was just so God ordained. And I had prayed for that. I was like, God, I want a God written story. I don't want a story that I contrived myself. I forced to happen. I manipulated my way. Of course, I played my part. I followed him back. I stalked a little, dropped the hanky. I like to post here and there. But I was like, he has to DM me. He has to pursue me. And he did. And so it was really cool.
That is really cool. It reminds me, like, my dad was the same way about my mom. He's like, no, I knew I wanted to marry her, like, the second I saw her. And he was the same way, like, just pursued her. And she kind of was like,
yeah, I'm good.
Yeah. And then he's like the best husband ever. Like, it's the sweetest thing to see. And that's, I think that's like kind of what every girl wants.
Yeah.
So, like, I think we are meant to be pursued and not be the pursuer.
Yep.
And like sometimes, it's different. But yeah, I think that's really sweet. And you guys look like you're just such a cute, happy couple.
Thank you.
I'm sure it's been like a joy, just all the excitement of like getting married.
It is. We've been married for 7 months. And I will say, because I do think, again, like a lot of people on the outside looking in, they're like, okay, so, she's married. I bet she's thriving. And like marriage, it does come with a lot of compromise where you're learning about the other person and you're like, okay, how do I live with you now? And how do we, to be transparent, like we didn't have sex before marriage. So it's like, okay, how does that work now? And like, what is this? How does this happen? And there's so much you're learning. And so I think in those newlywed stages, which we're still in, we've been married for 7 months, you're still learning the person. You're growing so much. And so yes, I love marriage. I think it is literally so much fun. My best friend is there every single day, but then you're still learning a lot. And so I don't want anyone to ever have this misconception that like, you get married and it's like, yay, oh my gosh, daisies and roses. And it's amazing. But it also comes with hard work. It comes with challenges and continually dating each other and asking hard questions and learning, how do we live together? How do we be married? What does marriage look like? And all that stuff. So
yeah. And I think it's respectable, like the intention to do it in a godly way.
Yeah.
It's like rare kind of in our society now. So the people that like you do see like do that, or at least try and like be transparent about it, like it's cool. It's cool to see the difference in their relationship and stuff.
It's not easy, I'll tell you, but it's worth it. God's way is the best way. It's so true.
Yeah, the best way. I kind of am like going to backtrack a little bit because I wanted to ask you, like, what was the turning point in your faith that you were like, okay, I'm all in with God?
Oh, it's back to California. And I think my whole life I lived on the fence. So it was like either I was out or I was all in and I was obsessed, and then I was out, and then I was like, okay, I want to go to church. I want to follow God when it's comfortable and convenient. But then when I want to go party and go do whatever I want to do, I'm out again. So my whole life I was just like in, out. I was like flopping. And I remember in high school, someone like called me out on that. She was like, Jeanine, like you're literally living 1 foot in and 1 foot out. She's like, it's time for you to go all in. And, for those couple months, I was like, I'm all in. And then I went right back to it. And so it was California when I got involved in that Bible study. This was when I was like really, really hungry for God, because I knew what I was doing and the way I was doing it was clearly not working. Like, look at my life, look at the fruit. I had no fruit of the Spirit. I was just very confused. And again, like I talked about, eating disorders, unhealthy patterns, unhealthy dating. I was a mess. And so I go in this Bible study, and the group had gotten so big. It was 40 girls. And there was one mentor. Her name was Casey. I love this woman. She's amazing. She was the leader of the Bible study, and she was a counselor. She was a life coach, and also just was like a mom to all of us. And there was this girl in the Bible study at one point, and she went to the front of the group and she was like, hey, I just feel convicted. She was like, I feel like someone here is supposed to go see Casey. She's like, even if it's not you, she's like, just in general, if anybody wants to go see Casey, I really recommend it. She'll change your life and she'll help you process anything that you're going through. And I don't know if you've ever felt this way when you're like in church, you feel super compelled by Christ. You're like, your heart starts racing and your palms start sweating and you're like, okay, God, I hear you. I know I'm supposed to go. And that was me. And I just felt like the Lord was like, you need to go see Casey. Like, girl, you need to go see her.
Casey sounds legit.
She's legit. She is. And she's like this 65-year-old woman. Like she's amazing.
Yeah.
So I called Casey and I'm like, I think I'm supposed to come see you. I don't know really like what we're supposed to talk about, but I'm supposed to come see you. So I start meeting with her every single Wednesday, and we just start going through childhood. We start going through my marriage. We start going through past hurts, everything in my life. We start diving into it. And there was just like one specific moment, I talk about it in my book, where I go there and I don't know what we're going to talk about because we just met every single Wednesday. Mm-hmm. And she's like, okay, Jeanine, like, what do you want to talk about? And I was like, I don't really know what I want to talk about today. I'm just here, I'm just doing the routine. Mm-hmm. And she's like, well, I know what we're supposed to talk about. And I'm like, oh, shoot. And I start like sweating. I'm like, oh no, what is she going to say? And she's like, the Lord revealed something to me that we need to talk about. And she has this piece of paper and she like puts it down on the table and she's like, you are a hypocrite. Oh, God. And it has the word hypocrite on the top of the paper. And she like puts it down. She's like, you're a hypocrite. And it was just like a dagger. It was like a dagger to my heart where I was like, I am a hypocrite. And I start fully like sobbing. And she's like, the Lord revealed to me that you're a hypocrite and you've been living one way for other people and another way for another. You have a mask on for these people and a mask on for these people. And she called me out. She just like truthfully was like, you're a hypocrite and you've been living a double life and it is time for you to choose. Mm-hmm. She's like, no more of this double life game that you've been doing. And I was like, okay. I mean, it was the harshest thing I remember at that time because nobody had called me that, but I knew I was all along. Yeah. And I also think people online were starting to see it where they were like, oh, I feel like there's something fishy with this girl. And so from that day forward, I remember being like, I'm going all in. There's no more living a double life. I'm committed. I'm going to follow God's ways. And she started teaching me the Bible and going through my childhood and trauma and like really helping me heal. And so from that day forward, I remember being like, I'm doing this. I'm going all in. I don't care what it takes. And it took, dropping friends. It took not going to the bars anymore. It took me leaving an entire friend group of people. And it took a lot of things, like a lot of healing and pruning, but it was the best decision of my entire life. And then the pandemic hit where I was alone and I had nothing better to do besides read my Bible. And so I was like, okay, God, I want to know you. So I started reading the Bible. I started with the book of John and I read from John into the end of the entire Bible. And oh my God, it changed my life. Mm-hmm. And suddenly I was like, wow, I have been missing this whole time. Because I'd only taken, God for who people told me he was, or like church, or maybe I listened to my parents. But now I was like, I know God for myself. Mm-hmm. And it was the best thing ever. And so that was like the pivotal moment in my life was California, this Bible study, serving in church, and Casey. And then just deciding I'm going to finally go in for myself.
Yeah. I think it's like so relatable though, just feeling that 1 foot in, 1 foot out, like you're there, but you're not. And like what you said about like wearing 2 different masks for 2 different people, like that is hard. Like I have been there. Like there's probably days where I'm like, you want to like fall back into it, and I think even just like leaving friend groups behind, like that's not easy to do. But I'm sure now, like having the friends that you do and like kind of being on the other side, it's not something you regret. But I always think about like the times when I'm praying, like, okay, God, make me more patient, make me more like you. Like when I pray those prayers, like something happens like that. Like you get called out, and usually it's like my mom or something who's like, you're being like this, and I don't want to hear it. And then I realize like a week later, I'm like, yes, I am. And it hurts to hear, but it's like, okay, well, this is what I prayed for. Like I do want to be more like Jesus. So I'm going to have to face the fact that like I'm imperfect and like I have pride and I struggle and I do all the things wrong all the time, but like he loves me still. And it's okay. He like prunes those things out of you like a little bit at a time. But I think it's hard. Like it's to put your ego aside, And
oh my gosh,
especially
it's so hard.
If you've been following the Lord for a long time, like you kind of think like, oh, I'm okay.
Yeah.
But like, no.
And that was a huge part of my story where I was like, what do you mean I'm a hypocrite? Like, at first it was really hard to hear because I was like, no, I'm a Christian. Mm-hmm. I go to church. I've grown up in a Christian family. What do you mean I'm a hypocrite? And the more that we dove into it, I was like, oh, I am a hypocrite. I really am. And honestly, who isn't? Like, who isn't a hypocrite?
Right.
But I genuinely was like, I was online being like, guys, I'm a Christian and I love God. And then making horrible decisions on a Saturday night and then going to church on a Sunday. Yeah. And I was just sick of that lifestyle. I was sick of feeling the weight of that, of like looking in the mirror the next day hungover. And I was like, why am I doing this? Like I began to like hate myself because I was so like disgusted that I would claim one thing and then act a different way.
Yeah.
And so it really is the power of people in your life, of people that are loving enough and love you enough to tell you the truth of like, hey, this is not okay. Or the way you're dating isn't okay. The way you're dressing, the way that you talk is not okay. And you have to be ready to receive it, because otherwise you'll be like, you're judging me.
Yeah.
And they're not judging you. They love you. They care about you. And people in your life should tell you the truth with grace, but they should tell you the truth in love as well. And it is the most loving thing to do, is to tell someone the truth.
Yes, 100% agree. I think that's so good. And like, you can feel it too internally. It's exhausting. And there's a reason like your soul isn't at rest in those places.
Right.
And like now, you know, going 2 feet in, like there's a different piece that you have about your life, knowing like, this is who I am. Like, this is the choices I want to make. Like, you know, it's just different. Like, you can feel it internally and it's hard to explain, but.
And I just feel so much lighter. Like I wake up and I have like joy, and I don't have regret. I don't regret the things I did the night before. Like I just love life so much more. It's so much more abundant with Christ. It really is. And Jesus literally says in John 10:10, like, I've come to give you life and life abundantly. And so when you follow him and you choose him, like your life becomes enriched. It doesn't mean financially. It means you have a sound mind. You go to bed. You don't have anxiety. You don't always walk in fear and shame. And that was just so much of my story. It was like, I look back at that younger girl and I'm like, girl, what were you doing? I'm like, get out of that. Stop. Because the way that I live my life now with Christ has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with him. And I'm just so thankful that I chose him and I walk now in righteousness. And righteousness doesn't mean that I'm prideful. It means that I'm in right standing with God. And it is a much better, blessed life. It really is.
It is. I think people who like haven't experienced it and like might look in will kind of have the perception sometimes of like, oh, it's not as fun of a life, you know, because you're not going to the bars all the time and like doing all the things that like the world is doing. But it's just a different like source of joy and fun, and it like lasts, you know, it's not for a moment. It lasts through the next day and the next day. And like, obviously you have hard days too. As a Christian, it's not a promised like happy life, but but like it's just an internal joy versus like that momentary happiness. And I think that is exactly right. The world standard of happiness can be very self-sustaining, and it's fleeting, and it's very temporal, and it's always based upon what you do. You know, the more I meditate, or if I go on a walk, or if I whatever, it's like always self-empowering. Versus Christ, it's like, God, this has nothing to do with me and everything to do with you. This is something outside of myself. I cannot be my own God, because I will fail every single time. And so I think that is the difference between, you know, the worldly happiness versus like God's joy. Huge difference is like, even though you will get trials, you will get persecution, you will get tribulation or sickness, or you lose a loved one, like God can give you his joy that surpasses all understanding, the peace that surpasses all understanding. And it doesn't make sense to the world. They're like, how are you still happy? How can you, you know, overcome being a cheerleader with all these people watching you and all these things? And you're like, the peace that surpasses all understanding is literally God. And it's so cool. It is so cool. I could talk about it for hours.
I know. I love it too.
I know. And there's like so much I like want to go into detail on. So I'm going to have to bring you back on because
we can talk more about it on my podcast.
Yes, we can. And speaking of, you guys all need to go check out her podcast, Happy and Healthy. Follow it, like, subscribe, do the thing, you know, show your love. But I feel like, we could talk for hours on like different topics, and we really should. So I'm excited, and I'm so happy that you came on and just took the time to chat.
Yes. I'm so glad this worked out. Thank you, Claire, for having me. This is so great. And hopefully you guys will check out my book. But if you don't, there's literally zero pressure either. There really isn't.
Read it.
Really, the goal is just to help people with it. So if you're looking for a guide to help you thrive and succeed, this is hopefully an amazing book for you to help you become more happy and healthy mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. So check it out.
Thank you guys. We'll see you next time.